Okay, recording in progress. Welcome, Casey,
Hi.
Executive Director of the Galveston's own farmers market. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview and for shedding your wisdom and bright light and fun to the rest of my Sustainable Food Systems Master's Program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for asking
You're welcome.
me.
Oh,
Oh,
and
and
who's that with you?
this is my son. He's 4 months old. This is Laszlo.
God, he's 4 months.
He's
Wow.
4 months. Look at this meatball. He's a hefty package, but he's joining us today. So
Okay, we'll get
he's
right into
very he's very interested in food systems,
it.
particularly my food system. So, it feels apropos.
That is the first identification of how you contribute to the sustainable food system. Thank you, Casey.
You're welcome.
Okay, Casey, tell
Mhm.
us how you became interested in food and food system, or were you just born that way?
I remember being interested in food and being excited about eating my whole life. And I think that that came from I have a mother who it was very important to her that I ate, you know, food she had grown, food she made. We were a very like a crunchy granola, a very like typical crunchy granola household. Like I wasn't allowed to have sugary cereals and all that kind of stuff. But really what I remember most is we had very large gardens, food production
Was
gardens when
this
I
in
was a kid.
Texas?
Yeah, in Cedar Park. In Cedar Park, Texas, which is outside of now Cedar Park is huge. But um I grew up with really large food production gardens that was our yard. Like we had a pretty large, like 1 acre backyard and lots of food. And I remember growing up thinking it was totally normal that your parents' closet was filled with pickled okra and like other things. And that was just like my mom hadn't really grown up that way. It was something that had become important to her through adulthood. And so that was just, that was my reality. But I wouldn't say that it's not, I didn't feel cognizant of like, I'm interested in food and how food is grown. It wasn't until I got to college and had my own journeys of like took some anthropology classes, learned about the concept of food inequity, and that started to stir my imagination to like how do we get the food and why do some people get a kind of food that other people don't get. And initially I was really interested in meat and how does meat get treated. And I think that was like because of some latent attachments to like I should be a vegetarian because that's a kinder thing to do.
Okay, okay.
And I like after doing that for several
Not
years I
because
realized
you
like
just love meat.
yeah, not because I'm like I love meat, I'm from Texas and I love meat. It
Right,
was
I
more
love
just
it.
like yeah, I think it was more attached to like honestly a narrative in my head that like that would make me a better person. If I'm being totally honest, I think it was connected to like being a vegetarian or being vegan means you're conscious and like but then I found my own cynical viewpoints in that world too, of like this space, this vegan vegetarian space is a very white, inequitable space that it's a real privilege to get to eat in a certain way. So I was just like learning some stuff. and and so that was all in college. And I would say really though, what really got a hold of me was I decided I wanted to be able to travel more in college. And so I used woofing. Um, which I'm assuming
And
you guys talk about, or do you need me to?
you haven't talked about it yet, so will you explain what that is?
Yes. WOOFing is an international organization, which it might be more tightly organized now, but when I was looking at it was quite loose. But it was basically it's a network of farms across the globe that you can pay a small fee and become a member of this network that allows people to come work on your farm in exchange for room and board. And I think it's a fantastic way to not only travel, but to explore food systems. For me, it was definitely just a method of like, I want to get to this part of the country, or I want to go here. But I did that in college, and that's how I traveled to like Spain and some other places. I wouldn't say I learned much about the food systems during that. But then once I graduated from undergrad, I was living in Austin and attending the Austin farmers markets and just getting more interested in the idea of like, I would really like to see and spend some time on some farms and see what it looks like from that standpoint. Because I love, this farmers market atmosphere. I love strolling around with my bag and the sun on my face and a nice coffee in my hand. But I would like to see what it actually looks like to be on these farms and to actually grow the food. And so that then started some more woofing for my husband and I. My boyfriend at the time, we built a camper onto our pickup truck and we traveled around the country, stopping at farms. And then eventually we stayed for a few seasons at a farm in Westchester County in New York and sold at the Union Square Farmers Market. And
Probably saw you there.
maybe so. It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised if I sold you an overpriced pint of wineberries or a Napa cabbage. But like for me, I loved it. We just loved it. I ate it up. Not only did, it was Westchester, so it was beautiful. And that's a whole other bag of worms, right? But like that's a very specific world, that world. But I loved everything about this farm. They really utilized their interns, let me put it that way. And so I ended up running their CSA, writing content for their website, like being the main person who handled their Union Square Farmers Market like booth. They gave over a lot of responsibility quickly, and as well as actually learning how to farm. And we both,
Yes, wow.
yeah, we both we loved it. Alex and I, my husband, we really liked living together. And yeah, we were in it for about a year. And then we realized, hey, I think this is what we want to do. We want to have our own operation and let's go back home to Texas. And so then it was just a matter of where do we go? And okay, I'll try to shorten it here. Alex had a family member who came to visit us and they're like, you are so passionate about this. You're so into it. Did you know that we have some family land down in Galveston County? And we're like, no, we did not. And they said, well, there's land down there. There's a house. It used to have an old farming operation. Why don't you come down and try it out? And of course it was like, we couldn't like look that gift horse in the mouth. And thus began our very privileged entry into having our own small farm operation. Even though I will say we were I had some nervousness about coming to Galveston County because I remember like one of the first things I Googled was like finding out there was like an active KKK chapter in the town, like right where we were farming. And I was like, cool. And I didn't have a whole lot of hope that this demographic down here, just like the Gulf Coast, Texas region, was going to be psyched about organic vegetables. But I was wrong. Yep. So that's the origin story.
Cool. Casey, I didn't know a lot of that.
Yes, you did. You just forgot.
Well, no, I knew a lot, but I didn't know like you guys had built a camper onto the pickup truck and drove around.
Yeah, that was fun. It's actually funny. I was telling the staff, we had our leadership retreat this past weekend, the staff retreat, and I mentioned that that's when I had a shaved head too, because I shaved my head for that journey because it was like, I don't know how often we're going to shower, and everyone was like dying to see photos of my shaved head, but I was like, I warn you now, I look like Dudley Moore. Like I've got a lot of cowlicks. It was a functional haircut, not a sexy haircut. But anyway, yeah, it was great. It was a great time.
Okay. Okay, so you became a farmer,
Mhm.
and of course that prepares you for farmers markets. So
Mhm.
I would assume that, wait, was the Galveston's farmers market in existence when you guys became a farmer?
We moved here January 1st, 2012. The market had started October 2011.
Okay.
So it had just began, and we joined it like a couple months later. We took credit for a bunch of citrus that was growing on the property, and it showed up with like 100 pounds of grapefruit. So we're like, "Hey." And then we just kind of stumbled along. So yeah,
Okay.
it had begun before we got there, but it was very new.
Okay, very new, but you know what called it into being, what its
Mhm.
genesis was. So
Yeah.
just give me an idea of really what called the Galveston Zone Farmers Market into being.
So Kate Black, who is one of my dearest friends, she was the main driver behind it. She's a white woman like me, and she had moved down to Galveston from Houston. And
Wait, from where?
from Houston.
Oh,
So
from
not
Houston.
from,
Okay.
yeah, she was from Katy, but she'd been going to architecture school in Houston, and moved down to Galveston with a boyfriend, and I think, was wanting to create things here that made this place feel like a better place to live for her. It was really her driver. Like, she loves food. She's really drawn to food. And, that's really it. She's like, I want there to be a farmer's market here because I want to be able to eat really good food. And I think also she it's interesting because I know this about her. She is very passionate about community spaces. Um, and I think it's an interesting angle because she comes at it from like the actual infrastructure of community spaces because she's an architect.
Ah,
And that was something she was really interested in, I think, early on. Of like, how do we craft a physical space that is for the community, And so that was definitely a part of the vision of the farmers market from day one. Was like, yes, this is about us getting access to local producers, but it's also about creating like, an agora, right? A place where people commune and connect. So she and a few other locals, gathered. Wow, sorry, Laszlo's like really talkative right now. They pulled their resources together, and by that I mean mainly like time and energy.
right.
And someone donated the parking lot that it was in. Like they said they could use this parking lot space. Um, and then and really Kate did everything. She did all the work. She did all of the calling, recruiting, and in the very beginning, I think the first opening day had I think it had like 10 vendors, and
Oh, wow.
I think all the produce was produce that they had gone to the Houston farmers markets to buy and bring down. There was no
Okay.
farmers. So when she and I met, I remember like when I came to scope out the farmers market when we first moved here in January, like a few months later, and I've been like, we started a farm. Now I understand why she was so excited to meet me. Because we were sort of at that time, the unicorn. Like, we want to start a small organic vegetable and flower farm in Galveston County. And so she was like, oh my God. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. 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 So fast forward to today, and how many years has Galveston Zone Farmers Market been in existence? By the way, also known as GoFM.
Or Go FM. You always call it Go
Okay,
FM.
fine. Go FM.
Go FM just makes more sense than Go FM. But that's a fight we've
This
had
is a
many
many
times.
years fight that we have.
We won't fight about this in your interview. So well, 2012 to now. So we just celebrated our 12th year? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it started as a community farmers market,
Mm-hmm.
producers farmers market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Emphasis on this will be an actual producers farmers market. There's no reselling. This is not a craft market. This is a food-based market. With the actual makers of the food, the growers of the food, selling it to consumers. That was the big emphasis.
Cool. Today, what is Go FM?
Well, it's more than a market, as our tagline. So it is still at its foundation. The farmers market remains the foundation of what we do. And all of the other programs have truly grown out of that community that we built at the market. There's not a single thing that's not connected to that. But so the market's larger now.
How many vendors?
On average, 25 to 35, depending on the season. It's still small. It's not a gigantic market because there's still that very big focus on this is a producers only market. In the last year, we opened it up. We opened the shredder slightly to artisans in a controlled way. But that's a really small percentage of the vendors, but it's remained that we try to have a really balanced food focused market, which means it's remained small because there's very few local food producers here, and particularly food producers who are growing foods using organic methods, whether they be certified or uncertified.
So organic is part of your standard. How do you define local?
For us, it's within 200 miles.
Okay, great.
So for your fellow students, Galveston, if you go out and make a 200, if we're at the center and you go out, you can only really go one direction because we have the Gulf on all other sides. And so it means we have a very shallow area to pick from. So unlike places like Austin or just, farmers markets all over the country they have a full circle, a full circumference. We don't have that, which means we're willing to go a little bit further, that 200-mile mark. But yeah, so there's the market. And then we have several other arms of programming that have grown out of that. The first would be our food access program, which the food access program was really the first thing I poured my energy into when I became the market manager back in 2014. And basically that is our initiatives that allow us to be a SNAP retailer. So we accept supplemental nutrition benefits, so EBT, food stamps. And not only that, but we triple the money of folks who use SNAP at our market. So basically that came about because, I became the manager. I was super excited about the space, but it was very clear that there was a very certain type of customer who was frequenting Go FM on Sundays. They were typically white. They typically had expendable income. They typically wore yoga pants, right? Like it was not, it was pretty, we all know this farmers market customer, but Galveston is a super rich and diverse place. And I remember thinking, like, if we really want to belong to this community and use the word community all the time, we should look more like Galveston. So my first thought was, how can we get people who don't have a big old thick wallet to shop here? And so I was like, well, first up, let's just become a SNAP retailer. And at that time, 12 years ago, I remember learning about, one second. I'm going to pass off the baby. You got it? I got it. Okay. I remember Wholesome Wave was making, the organization Wholesome Wave was making headlines for their double dollars program. The idea that just match people and give them more money to buy whatever they want. Like don't prescribe for them. And I remember thinking that is genius. And that would be like, all we have to do is find a pool of money to match people. And so if they come and spend their SNAP here, that's great, but doesn't it sound even better if we give them more money to buy at the market? And then everyone benefits. So it's like the vendors would love it, the customers would love it. So we rolled that out. That was like the first element of that. And then after that, we brought in our farmers market nutrition program WIC system, which is, again, that's a national program, but that allows us to provide vouchers worth $30 of free produce to anyone who uses WIC benefits. And then since then, we've also introduced a FMNP senior program. So that's for low-income seniors. And then after we did the SNAP double dollars program for several years. I don't know if you remember the like government shutdown in 2018. I remember some folks that we were working with at one of the housing authority buildings. Like we would work with them a lot. And I remember hearing the refrain over and over again. They were like, what am I going to do if the government shuts down and I don't get any more in my ABT? Like what happens? What happens? And I was like, well, we should just like give them more money now while we can. And so then we started doing a triple program where they get triple their SNAP. So that's the food access program. And it's all connected to what happens at market. It's still very tied to the market location. Then we have our Real Food Project, which that was born in 2017. Again, as a result of, because I was running the market, I was invited to these discussions that were called the ACEs to Assets group, right? And it was about ACEs, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, to assets. And it was run by UTMB's then School of Prevention of Violence. And they were just trying to create a cohort of people who care about community well-being and get them all together in the room and talk about things, to put it briefly. And I met someone who ran bilingual parenting classes for the Family Service Center, which is a nonprofit here. And because I'm interested in food, I remember thinking like, oh, well, what do you guys eat? Like, you guys eat at dinner time, what do you eat? And they're like, well, we don't have a lot of money, so it's usually like Pizza Hut. And I'm a snob, so I was like, ew, gross. We can do fucking better. And so I remember thinking like, wow, well, wait, this community of people that you serve in these bilingual parenting classes, almost all of them are eligible for SNAP or using SNAP or using WIC. I was like, what if we come bring you food for your classes, and then we also just get to like tell them about our program. So that was our first foray into what is now the Community Meals Program. And it continues today, and it's all about just serving communities of people who are either food insecure or as a way to try to knit together more community connectivity. And then our cooking classes came out of the WIC program we had ourselves, because basically we were giving out all these vouchers the summer of 2017. And I remember like feeling like a real boob, sweating my ass off at the market location and giving like young moms $30 worth of eggplant or okra, and then being like, bye. have,
Thanks.
have fun, you know, and they're like, they look bewildered and freaked out, or like in some cases kind of pissed off. And so I was like, I mean, I wouldn't know what to do if someone just handed me $30 worth of eggplant. I mean, I would, but I wouldn't have 2 years ago, you know? So it was like, okay, we need to create some sort of scaffolding to support this, so that it's like, hey, here's this, and also here's 5 ways to prepare this, or hey, we're going to show you how to make this right now, or whatever. Because the reality was, we're not going to have more than eggplant, peppers, and okra from the months of June to September. So anyway, so our cooking classes began then, and now we have 2 to 3 cooking classes every month that serve all kinds of demographics. Then there's another program that we started in 2017. You might be familiar with it, named Wilson. The Young Gardeners Program, which, oh my gosh, this was funny to talk about it with you guys. So basically, a wild stallion of a human named Nan Wilson started attending our farmers market. Are you gonna cry?
And I'm like, no, no.
Are you already? Do your fellow students know this about you?
No,
Surely.
they don't.
Oh my God. Well, I can't. I'm so glad. I'm so glad I popped the cherry. So, Nan, you started showing up at market with your dog, with your enormous fucking dog that would sit on my feet and was so wonderful. And I adored you from day one. And I would just get you to sit with me and we would talk, and you became a volunteer. You were a pretty bad volunteer.
I was a bad volunteer.
But you sat with me, which was the most important thing, because at that time I was doing everything. I did everything. So I just needed company. And one day I remember us talking, you had like gone on this like mind journey with that, what is that? Anyway, you were like envisioning stuff you wanted to change about the world you live in. And you talked about how you wanted there to be a school garden on every campus in Galveston, because Galveston is so segregated and there's so many children suffering from nutrition related illnesses. And not only that, but like you just really believed in the magic that comes out of like growing food and being in a garden and touching fucking plants. And I remember feeling like I feel the same way. And it drives me crazy when I drive around these schools, and because a lot of the gardens or a lot of the schools had gardens, but they were like dilapidated, neglected, filled with weeds. They had been someone's pet project, right? And then they go by the wayside. And I remember thinking, gosh, we would be such a good resource for that, because we are a network of people who care about food, who believe in this, and we have farmers and people who grow things like at our fingertips. Wouldn't it be cool? And then you shared that and you were on fire for it. And fast forward, I invited you to my house and I said, why don't we like do this together? And you can join my board, and like, but like you can have the oomph of the nonprofit behind you. We can write grants for it. And you bought it, you totally bought it. And then we worked together to make the Young Gardeners program, which today is oof, it's such a huge creature doing so much good. And the best part is like, I can't even take credit for it anymore. Like there's so many people doing so many good things. Like it's so much bigger, but it basically, we are, very meaningful partner with Galveston Independent School District, where there's a food production garden of a minimum of, I mean, some of them are 1,000, 1,500 square feet, but a minimum of 400 square feet of raised bed growing space that grows food on these campuses. We work with after school populations at each school. There's kids coming in those gardens every day, stewarding the garden. They are the true stewards of the garden. They take home harvests. This year so far already, we've grown over 5,000 pounds of food at all of these gardens that is distributed amongst children. But beyond that, now we also have tons of programs that bring the magic of those gardens into the school day. And that's really been my hobby horse for the last like 2 years, is how do we make sure these gardens are being utilized at all times. And so we integrate into the cafeteria menus. We work closely with the child nutrition department at GISD. And as like right now, actually, we are hiring another full-time outdoor learning educator, who is someone who is going to be embedded in GISD. They're our employee. GISD contracted with us to make this happen. And this person is working with teachers on a case-by-case basis to bring them out into the garden and do lessons in the garden. And also we're starting to roll out professional development for all the teachers of GISD to use the gardens. It's just like so great. It's so great. There's so many good things happening. That's not even, there's much more, but that's YGP. And at the same time, during COVID, we also rolled out our Victory Gardens program, which is also a raised bed garden program, but it operates differently, where it's much simpler. We build gardens in areas that we think like geographically will serve a meaningful demographic, and we manage the gardens, we grow the food, and we just give it all away. So, and we have 2 of those on Galveston Island right now. No, 3. Oh my God, we just built our 3rd.
Right. Okay.
Duh. So, those are the main programs. That was a long answer.
Wow. Okay. More than a market, for sure.
Yeah. And we're actually in the middle of a rebranding campaign, because it's finally time for us to, I mean, it's actually belated. It's very late, but we need to change our name.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Wow. So with all of that, it's a lot. That's a lot.
There's a lot.
I mean, it's doing a lot in the community, and of course, a lot to manage. But I think I want to focus on in the community. So wait, before I do that, what kind of measurements do you use to determine your success?
Well, it varies depending on the program, right? But I love data. I love numbers I mean, qualitative and quantitative data is very important to us,
Okay.
because let me put it this way. So for the food access program, it's really easy to pull numbers for that, right? Because we know how many SNAP clients did we see? How many of those SNAP clients are new SNAP clients? So if we see increased numbers every year, that's good. Do we also see sustained numbers, are the same types of are the same people coming back year after year to shop the market, because that's also meaningful data, right? I don't want a customer who uses Snap to come once. We count them, yay, we feel good about that, but they never came back. That would be important to know. The data around kids is around who use our Young Gardeners program. That's a real mix of quantitative data, like how many people are coming into the garden, how many pounds of food did we grow, how many times did we integrate different vegetables into the cafeteria menu, like 1,000 kids were fed 3 times a month, that kind of stuff. But the more exciting way to measure that is in interviews with the kids, right? And in hearing, at least to me, watching people experience that and like having them tell the story of the impact later. Like recently we rolled out a new initiative through YGP, which is basically every 6th grader came through our Morgan Elementary garden a couple weeks ago. We did this week of, it was this whole new thing. It was this initiative. I mean, it would take too long for me to explain it, and it's too many acronyms. Nobody will give a fuck. But every 6th grader came through our garden, and we rotated them through different stations. They learned about soil porosity. We talked about the 3 sisters gardening. They composted. Like, we did all of these different stations, and it was a huge deal. It was a manic week, and it was in partnership with GISD. We're like trialing something out. And the number of teachers who came through and at the end of it were like, I had no idea that this is what happens here. They're like, my kids. So we had some of the students who are like the disciplined students, the students that, leave campus to go. The amount of prep they wanted us to go through to protect ourselves from the dangers of these children was like a bit much. And those were some of the most well-behaved kids. Like it was so meaningful to watch their teachers see the power of that space on them and have it change their mind about these children. And I was like, oh, maybe it's actually not about these kids are bad kids. Maybe it's the setting in which these kids are supposed to meet certain expectations. And like the way that we treat them differently in different spaces. I just feel like I used to say all the time that like food is a common denominator, right? Like food is a common denominator and the gardens are an equalizer. Like that is just how I feel. And so that was a roundabout answer to that question about data. But to me, that's the data that like in my role, I'm always storytelling, right? That's always what I'm doing because I'm trying to get someone to give us $10,000. And so I tell them that story and I say, this kid who's been like batted around and people think this is some bad kid. You get him out, hand him a water wand, tell them to water the zucchini for a while, let them try a bite of hibiscus leaf and tell them it tastes like Jolly Ranchers and then like watch their mind explode. It's just like, it's powerful. So that stuff. We use a lot of numbers, but a lot of stories.
So actually following up on that, touching so many kids, how do you think your impact is extending beyond the kids, beyond the kids in that program, but also do you think your impact is extending further into the community over time?
Yes, I do. Oh gosh, in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Very many ways. How do I give you a succinct answer? I feel like, well, okay, if I hone in on YGP first. I mean, from day one, we talked about it all the time, right? These were supposed to be generation changing spaces, right? They are like, and I very firmly believe whether it's our victory gardens, whether it's the gardens we have that are built into a public park within the city or a garden at your campus, if you're a kid who grows up with that type of environment available to you, and especially the work we're doing now, which is trying to get kids in those spaces every day, like that will inform part of who you are and the way you see the world, especially if the expectations of how you're supposed to behave change alongside it, right? And I mean, I have anecdote after anecdote and, you know, quote after quote from parents who tell us that they see behavior changes. And, you know, we know that those gardens, when kids are the ones bringing home their harvest that they helped, you know, maintain and steward, and then they're the ones that pull the carrots and they're bringing it home, even if they don't eat it, even honestly, if it becomes garbage, like that's imprinting on that family, right? That kid, it's empowering for the child, first off. And as I said, I firmly believe in its impact to alter the impression upon generations. Same thing with the community space we're creating. Like, we work really hard to make these spaces, whether it's the farmer's market, whether it's a cooking class, or if it's a school garden or a community garden. I mean, we fail constantly, but we're always working to make sure they're actually accessible and inclusive to everyone here in Galveston. And that means that puts us in some uncomfortable spaces sometimes, like having to defend the type of people we want in our market, whether that's we're having drag queen story times, or whether that's because we're having a celebration of Rosh Hashanah at market, or we are letting in coffee with a cop, or, you know, whatever it may be. Like, I just believe that if we continue to curate spaces where people know, like, we are actively always fighting for your comfort here. I don't know, I think that's just really important. I think it's really important.
Got it. Yeah.
And man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know where I am.
Tell me one challenge. One challenge for the future?
One challenge for the future?
Yeah.
And we can come back. We can talk more. I could talk more today if I need to. I'm really
Okay.
sorry to leave.
No.
Okay.
Just one challenge. One challenge. That's it.
What do you mean one challenge? Like, to
What
you, to the
is a challenge?
universe?
No, from
Oh, for
your
us.
perspective, yes. Or either for the future or challenging now. What is a big challenge now?
3 came to mind all at once.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
The first one is one I mentioned earlier, which is we're in the middle of, like, we have to reinvent our name and how we present ourselves to the world, because we've gotten big enough now. We have 10 full-time staff. We're about to have 11 in the new year. That our name really holds us back. I know it does, from funding opportunities, because people say, like, why do you need a $500,000, you know, this, or why do you need this? You're a farmer's market. I'm like, but we're more than a market. So we're in the middle of coming up with that, but it's really difficult to come up with a new name that suits, especially because working with certain kinds of consulting companies that could help us with that was totally out of our budget. It's totally out of our range to, like, access that. So we're doing it ourselves, which I do believe we have the capacity to do that. I believe in my team to do that, but it is just, like, big thought work. It feels very weighty to pick the right name. So that's one challenge right now. It's one we'll move through, not a scary challenge. The second challenge is where we are right now with all the work we've been doing with the Young Gardeners program in the school district, which is, like, you know very well, it's my goal that eventually we have a relationship as such with the school district that they are happily finding up to $300,000-$400,000 a year that they just hand right over to us so that we can operate everything for them. You know, and now honestly, we didn't get to talk about this, but I would like us to take over more and more and more, because I have a lot of faith in GoFM's staff to run things, and I don't have a lot of faith in JSDs. So, but, like, we're actually cooking with gas. We're in a really good place with that right now, but that is a continued challenge of, like, getting all the pieces on board to understand this is not a club. This is not a cute little thing that we do, but it's like, this could be the definition of, like, pioneering education, and GISD could be a part of it if you just fucking go with it. So that's the second challenge. And the third challenge is one that, honestly, I wish we could have talked more about it. I thought I was afraid. This was like, when you asked me to do this, I was like, uh-oh, I'm gonna really get on a platform about this thing, which is So this part of Texas, and really honestly nationwide, but definitely I'll just limit it to here, this part of Texas. It's really hard to farm, and it's hard to farm and live and thrive. And lately, I would go so far as to say, I don't think it's really possible. And I know because, well, I had every privilege in the world to make it work as a small farm operator. And we did it, but we were not thriving. We were not thriving at all, you know, and so I have really seen as the steward of this organization, I cannot in good faith go out and constantly try to recruit new farmers, bring in small
So
farms, all that.
local farming is not sustainable everywhere.
Local farming is not
Not.
sustainable everywhere, and it's not the answer, you know, that there's that idea of like, we need, you know, 1 million small farms, that's it. Or like, and I was very much like singing that song over and over again, and I am now completely reversed where I'm about how do we as a farmer's market, as a human, support these endeavors, but also be practical about the fact that like the small farmers I have at our market right now, they are not thriving. Some of them, if they really did their numbers, would find out they're drowning. And so we've been in this place of like, how do we really, in good faith, operate this market in a way that, you know what I mean? It's chewy. It's really chewy. And we have a couple of things that we've been doing to try and work with that, but still, you know, not close down the farmer's market. Cause that's not what I want. That's not what I think is the answer, that like, oh, well, we should just not exist. That's not it. But I also think, you know, the state we live in, the legislation we're under, the climate change catastrophes we're under, economic, like there's so many aspects of it. So
All
that,
these things we're studying.
yeah.
All of these
So
things we're studying.
I would love to talk more about
Wait.
it, honestly, because it's honestly something I think about it every single day. And I lose sleep over it too, because it is like,
Because
sometimes I think we're part of the
you know
problem.
people who are being affected.
Yes, and we're part of the problem. I think we're part of an answer, but we're part of the problem as well. And when I've raised these questions, so this is another assignment. We're going to put on a conference in 2026, man, and I would like you to be a part of it. But I cannot stop thinking it. We got it through a farmers market promotion program grant, and I can't stop thinking about all I want to do is talk about like death to farmers markets at our farmers market conference, and like why we should be talking about this and helping make things different. But like when I've gone to other conferences for farmers markets, and if I bring up any of this, like it's fucking crickets.
Oh, really?
Or I get this look of like, why would you say that? Farmers markets are like the shining beacon on the hill. I'm like, but they're not everywhere.
Blinders.
You know, it's like if you have like California is different here, then is different than New York, then is different than New Hampshire, then is different than Idaho. You know, like we're not the same. That's our challenge.
Super. No, this is the perfect place to end for what we're looking at, which
Mhm.
is where does urban agriculture fit in to the development of a sustainable food system? And that question that you just asked and the death of farmers market thing,
Dude, yeah, it's big.
Casey, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I'm sorry I couldn't talk longer, but I love you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love you. Talk to you later.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye.
Wait.
Wait,
Oh no,
wait.
I'll edit it. Never mind. Bye.
Bye.